Hey, welcome to part 5 of Introduction to Illustrator. This is a good part, right? We finally have our characters sort of made. Now we just need to do some customization. We're going to add some shading using gradients and then eventually add some faces so that we can change this out and do different things with our Lego man. So we're doing pretty good here. If you're following along with written instructions, we are in instruction number 20. So at this point, we want to make sure we are not clicked on anything. So click out here in the white space, and then we're going to look at some items that are new. So we're going to work with gradients. And gradients are those things where one color gently fades into another color. We're going to go to the Swatches panel. The Swatches panel is going to be indicated over here by what looks like 6 little boxes. If you click on it, it should pop up. You can also access any panel at any time under the window menu, but I really prefer to use the boxes. So I'm going to come over here and click on the box for swatches. It pops open. You'll notice if you look carefully, I've got some little gradients here. Here's an orange-yellow gradient. But what we want to do is have some other gradients to look at. And Adobe Illustrator comes with what's called libraries. So this library book that you see in the bottom left-hand corner of swatches, that library book is going to give us a bunch of options for colors. When you give it a click, you'll see that there is a section for gradients. They're in alphabetical order. So we see that section for gradients. Now for our purposes, we're going to all choose the one called tints and shades. But understand there's a whole bunch in here, like there's one said fruits and vegetables, earth tones. There's even like skin tones and sky. So depending on what you're doing, there's a gradient book for that. We're going to click on tints and shades, and it's going to open up a separate little panel, which already has some preset colors for us. And that's really kind of the easiest way to start with a gradient is with these presets. Okay, now again, in the real world, we would have done this when we were creating the arms so that we don't have to repeat this process. But also, you're in the learning phase, so doing these repetitive things is good for you to put it into your memory banks. All right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to isolate an arm. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to double click on my arm. If everything grays out except the arm, I have isolated the arm. Now, if it doesn't all gray out, I might need to double click again because sometimes you do have to double click multiple times to get in there. Okay, but it looks like right now I am right on the blue part of the arm, and that's what I want to be on. Again, no worries. If you accidentally mess up, you just undo, Control Z. Okay, so we're going to apply the blue tint and shade to the arm. The blue tint and shade to the arm. So, we're going to come over here to tints and shades. If you point your mouse over the top of them, it'll pop up and tell you what they are. We want the blue one. So there we are. Let's go ahead and give it no stroke at this point because we did have a stroke on here. So again, I'm just going to come up to the little black line and then set it to null, which means we get rid of that stroke. And I'm going to put the gradient back on top just so I'm not confused. It gets confusing when you put the other one on top. If you click a button, it applies to the stroke because the stroke's on top. So we always want to keep that fill on top. Okay, so I've got that on here. It's a very subtle change. It's a darker blue here and a lighter blue on the other side. So that we can kind of see it a little bit better, we're going to change this gradient using the gradient panel. So there's a picture of a gradient over here. This is your gradient panel, or again, you can go to the window menu. But if we click this, this little guy pops up. This is your gradient editor. And you can see down here the colors, the three shades of blue in our gradient. These are called color stops. So each color in a gradient is called a stop. And then up here at the top is the type of gradient. We have a linear gradient. So like a line, it goes left to right in the colors. We're going to switch it to a radial gradient, which radiates from the center. That way, it kind of will make the lighter color be sort of on the elbow. All right, give it a click. See how it's lighter in the middle, and now it's darker on top and bottom. That's a radial gradient. So again, you could modify the colors if you wanted to. You could like click on a color and then choose a different color by double clicking and choosing it on the list. I'm not going to modify my gradient on this one just for the sake of time. Now we need to do this to the other arm, and you were like, oh man, now I've got to go figure out all these things. No, we're going to create a preset gradient that we can add to our swatches panel because that'll be so much faster. Okay, So while you're still clicked on the arm and it looks good and it's the color that we want to go to the swatches panel. Now, if these are bothering you, hit the little arrows to collapse them. Okay. So go to your swatches panel. That's the one with the boxes. And then while our gradient is on top, all we have to do is click on the plus sign to make a new swatch, and it'll do it based on what we're clicked on. I'm just going to call this blue arm and press OK. And then now look here, you have blue arm in your swatches. So now it's ready. It's ready to be used again, and we don't have to go to all the trouble to open up all those other things to use it. Okay, now again, this one should not have a stroke on it, so it should have null on here, and then this one on top. All right. And if we needed to edit the gradient, we still could double click, but that's going to go into here. If we want to actually do something with gradient, we have to be in that gradient panel, which is this one, remember? Okay. So now I'm going to go isolate that other arm. So just double click out here anywhere, right? And then double click on this arm and then click on the sleeve because we only want it to do to the sleeve. And now in your swatch, go choose the one that you created. All right. And if you didn't take care of the stroke, because see, mine didn't, click on stroke, set it to none, put your gradient part on top. All right. Now we're good. So again, make sure that you have your stroke set to none on here. Okay. Double click anywhere out in the open space to get out of there, out of that isolation mode. Now we're going to go isolate the leg and the groin areas and apply that same blue arm swatch. Now, not the foot though. So double click here. I'm isolated a little bit, but I'm not isolated all the way. See, if I click again, it's choosing the whole body. So I got to double click again and then click. Okay. And now it's got the leg and the foot. I got to double click again because I need to just get to that leg. Okay. And then again, we're going to go ahead and apply that blue arm swatch yet again from the gradient from here. Okay. So there it is. So it doesn't look the same. Let's open up the gradient panel and let's switch this to a linear. There. Now it goes left to right. And then we're going to repeat this process and do it to the other leg. So double click out, double click in, double click in, double click in until you're clicked straight on only the leg. Back to your swatches, choose your thing, go to your gradient, switch it to linear. It's a process, but we got it. Okay, double click out of there. And then if you want to, you could also apply that up here into that little groin area so it looks like they're all pants. Again, I got to double click, double click, double click, double click. And you may have to kind of move your mouse around so that you finally get isolated to the part that you want to work on. Okay, and then this one, I think I'll leave that one at radial, but it's up to you. Okay, double click out in the blank space anywhere to get completely out of the group. All right, there we go. We've got a nice looking little guy here at this point. Now, we can't get into everything in this basics workshop, but you can also access lots of other things under swatches. So just to show you again, we do have libraries. One of the fun things that we also have is patterns. And so there's all kinds of different pattern ones like dots, lines, textures. I'm going to click on textures for a minute so you can see. But we also have all these little textures. So for instance, I could double click and get into the torso part if I wanted to. And again, kind of got to move your mouse around sometimes until you get a hold of it. And I could come in here and add some textures. See? So you can do lots of different little fun things to it. Now, these textures don't look so good because they don't have an edge around them, but you do have all of those different options. So just know there's a bunch of library books. I'm going to switch this back to red that you can open up to do different things. Okay, double click to get completely out of that isolation mode. All right. Next, we're going to be making some face options. So let's go ahead and give this a save and then join me back in the next section.